Welcome everyone to the October 11th version of the Zooch and Wilde podcast. I am so glad that we got that intro out of the way. We are playing with a new system right now in StreamYard, but forget the system, Zooch. What an amazing weekend we just had of college football, and we got an even better one coming up.
Oh, it was great. What was it? Three? Yeah, three top 10 teams lost. You had some upsets that maybe people were calling the Michigan and Tennessee to lose, but nobody's picked Vanderbilt to beat Alabama. So
No one, no one picked that. You had Miami almost losing. I was at that game. We'll briefly touch on that later, and then we're going to get into this is the date that before the season, me and you both talked about. I know people who watch college football circled on their calendar October 12th. This is tomorrow for the people who are listening. It is on paper probably one of the biggest days of the season so far. There's a lot of great games. Ohio State, Oregon, we're talking about. We're talking Red River rivalry, including also a game that, you know, started to look a little iffy, but LSU plays Ole Miss. That's like your dark horse game. That's insane that LSU Ole Miss is kind of like not an afterthought, but if that's your third best game. You got a great weekend of college football, Zooch, and I cannot wait to get into it. Talking last weekend, talking this weekend.
yeah, it's one of those weeks where you can't the first couple weeks unless you're one of the teams who plays that opening week or maybe the second week when you had like Texas, Michigan. You're excited for it, but you're not you are anticipating it, but like this week with Ole Miss, for example, I'm just ready for the game to get here. I hate the waiting. I'm at that part in the season where you just want to you want the game to get here because it's all you think
Hmm.
about all week long. So
Yeah, it is that part of the game, and we're going to get into it. And before we do, just want to remind everyone that you can still get 15% off all Settle Down merch on the Settle Down store by using that code shown below, Z and W15, all caps. That's this capital Z and sign W15 for 15% off on all Settle Down merch. We got some great new hockey shirts that are in, little Celebrini Smith 24 for the election season if you're a Sharks fan, or you can support this podcast. Get yourself a Zooch and Wild shirt. I was actually Zooch. I was wearing my Oski themed Zooch and Wild shirt in Memorial Stadium on Saturday when I was at the Cal game. Not the result we wanted, but always a good time in Memorial Stadium. Tailgated on top of a parking garage. That was the first. Space is limited in the Bay Area. But before we talk to that, we are going to talk about the main story of the week. Strike friggin' one for Alabama. Vanderbilt beats Alabama first time in over 40 years. The sky is falling in Tuscaloosa, or at least that's what their fans are making it seem like.
look, we were like half joking, but being serious too when he went down there about they don't treat a loss like Washington would treat a loss, and he is getting the full Bama
No,
fan treatment after. I mean, you have articles being written that say he looks like he picks up his clothes next to the Twinkies at Walmart. You have, which that is my favorite article ever written. It was by somebody with like AlabamaLive.com or something like that. Uh, you had legend, longtime Paul Feinbaum caller having a complete and total come apart about Vanderbilt beating Alabama. You had the dude on the show who said that Alabama needs to come out and run the wishbone like Bear Bryant secretly did against USC in 1970. I mean, the whole show was just get used to it because they've already forgotten you beat Georgia. You just can't.
it
That
is.
was what
No,
we were being serious about. You cannot lose to
these
Vanderbilt when you're at
these
Alabama.
fans are so accustomed to winning, and especially in Kalen DeBoer, he is a perceived outsider, and you do get less slack when you are this perceived outsider, not SEC born and bred. You kind of see that we're going to talk about later on. Sam Pittman, he kind of gets a little bit more leeway because he is Arkansas, represents that. Kalen DeBoer is an outsider, and when you blow these big games, but I don't want to even say blow. We're going to get into the game later. I just want to touch on like the fans first. They are treating this like they have the season's over. Like this is it feels like the fan response is like we're in the old BCS and like they're not going to be a top 2 team now. Also, do want to say I also want a second legend. That was an all-time come apart on the Paul Feinbaum show. 7-minute clip. That's why this segment is called Strike Friggin' One. I'm not going to spoil it. Please look up Legend Alabama. You guys might remember from when Alabama was trying to hire a coach when Nick Saban left. He is also the no damn Dabo guy. So please give that a listen. But before we even get into the game, I want to we're talking fans. Vanderbilt fans were insane. They walked the goalpost down Broadway, Zooch. I mean, it was bizarre world in Nashville seeing all this stuff happen. It was eh, Alabama doesn't lose to Vanderbilt. I can't even get the word out of my mouth in how long, a week? Like
Yeah,
it still doesn't seem real to me.
no, and it's to like add on to your point. We didn't have a show last week because I had some family stuff I had to take care of. But for example, we all know a couple weeks ago, Ole Miss lost to Kentucky, and I was annoyed when it happened. But then you like kind of sit down and think about it, and you're like, okay, like, and I think a little bit of it happened with Alabama too. That they didn't play their best. Like I think there's time.
No,
Like I missed a good portion of that game because I was in a wedding this weekend. Shout out Troy, married Troy now.
shout out
uh,
Troy,
but
Mr. Optimism.
yeah, He was quite optimistic, I must say. And then the Mets loaded the bases legitimately when we like walked outside to have the wedding ceremony. They were down. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen. You just had people in the crowd motioning the score of the game to everyone else in the wedding. Groomsmen wise, at least, was from New York City besides me. But anyway, like I watched the Ole Miss game and I'm like, okay, they missed a couple big plays, had a red zone turnover, stuff like that. And I'm not saying Kentucky and Vanderbilt are Ohio State or anything like that, but you can't always get away with that,
No,
especially I
you
think
can't.
now when, yes, some teams are going to benefit more in the transfer portal than others, but you're not, I don't know, like I don't think it's, it's not a good, neither loss is good. I think the Vanderbilt loss is way worse because I look at Kentucky and I'm like, oh, they got killed by South Carolina, and I like had looked after the Ole Miss game that Saturday night. I looked up that game a little bit more, and I was like, I didn't realize, Kentucky had more yards than them. It was just Kentucky kind of played bad in that game, and that's going to happen throughout the season.
Yeah,
Like every team is going to have
no,
a close call.
I completely agree to some of it. Like Alabama looked, if there's one word to describe that game, it's just lackadaisical.
Right.
You come out slow and you let Vanderbilt score, and then it's pick six, and it's almost like the Alabama players never felt an urgency to win. I don't know if you felt that it was like, oh, we're Alabama, we're just gonna find a way to win, and they didn't know that. I mean, credit to Diego Pavia. I want to take nothing away from him. Like if he's not the quarterback for Vanderbilt, they don't win that game. But this wasn't like a fluky upset. That's like this. This wasn't a fluky game. Like it's Vanderbilt won the turnover battle and they won the rushing battle. They gave up less than 100 rushing yards and they rushed for over 100 yards. Like that. That's not a fluke. That is Alabama just thinking that they could just. I seriously think that they were still riding the high and they were looking ahead.
Oh,
They were looking ahead
absolutely.
to next week. Whatever DeBoer wants to say, and I think if you want to point for a reason of why they lost this game, I think coaches and players equally share the blame of looking ahead onto that huge monster game, not tomorrow, but the next week.
Oh, absolutely. And it's certainly recoverable for Alabama. And that's what I was, we talked about it a little bit in the group chat and stuff. Like, yeah, the loss sucks. Obviously, like you never want to lose or whatever, but overall you're fine. Alabama, if they're 10-2, I mean, you don't want to go like 9-3. Then that starts getting
No,
a little like
that's
it
that.
wasn't. This is not the game you had chalked up as like, oh, like that could be a loss. That's the part that's bad about it. But I
Although
don't necessarily think that it changes, like, maybe now you don't if but
I,
everyone I'm
I
trying to
think
think,
all it
yeah, everyone
changes
has a
is,
loss except Texas in the
yeah, no,
SEC, so
I think all this changes is people's perception of the SEC, especially this weekend. It's, people joke about, oh man, the NIL, or it's not even a joke. People have said NIL doesn't change things. It does. I've been saying this for years. It does truly shorten the gap. Now, does it shorten the gap in terms of can Vanderbilt compete for national titles? Probably not. Can it close that gap? No, but Vanderbilt's going to have some guys, and like Kentucky's going to have guys. You see teams like Ole Miss, they have some guys now, and that's because like the prestige of an Alabama, where it's like I have to go here to make my own. It's like no, you don't. You can find your own anywhere. We're seeing it with Ashton Genty, not an NIL thing, but he can do his thing at Boise just because of the way the college football is so much more visible nowadays. Like you don't have to go to one of these big time powers. I think you're going to continue this see to happen. I think the last thing we do have to talk about with this game is we have to talk back about these reactions. Zooch, these were, I mean, this is some of the greatest stuff I've seen ever on Twitter. I mean, it
it was
seriously was. I mean, I know you have the tweet of the week that we're going to bring up in your list segment, but my goodness, I was seeing some crazy stuff. I saw the, what did they say? They said he looked like he gets his clothes from Walmart and he shouldn't be wearing a schlubby workout shirt that you look like you get next to the Hostess Twinkies. It's
yes, they were
just, what are we doing?
well, and I mean, it is like, there is at the University of Alabama, there are you don't get any better highs and you don't get any better lows, because I truly believe there's not a more passionate fan base on planet Earth than a Bama fan. And when things are going well, it's going really, really well. But if they did somehow lose to South Carolina this week,
Oh boy, I
we
don't.
are kind of making fun of the honeymoon is over call,
No,
but
he'll be hot seat like, and I'm not joking. Like there will
right.
literally be fans being like, "Hey, maybe like this is like we cut it." Like if Kalen DeBoer loses, and we talked about this before the season. Like, what if Kalen DeBoer loses 3 games and is ranked like 19th in the country and like misses the playoff?
Yeah,
Like
you're
that's
on
a
the hot
very realistic scenario. Yeah, it's crazy to me. Crazy to me. But yeah,
and with the portal and stuff like that, it's not like Kalen DeBoer was left with, you know,
no.
like, his situation is a little bit different than what Hugh Freeze's situation was, and Hugh Freeze is kind of on the getting teetering on that hot seat edge too of, all right, you know, we're expecting results now. Like, you've had, like, the excuse making is over, so
Hmm.
we'll
100%
see.
agree. Yeah, we'll see with Alabama. Only time will tell. That Tennessee matchup in a week is going to be amazing. But there's a lot of other upsets this week. Zooch, Tennessee losing to Arkansas. Shout out Cody with his 5 favorite teams. It sounds like. You had Louisville losing. You had Michigan losing. USC losing. Miami almost losing. A lot of upsets. And I want to pose this question to you. Who is it? And it's a two-parter. Who do you think comes back the most and can use this upset as a learning opportunity? And which one of these teams, the upset, do you think kind of kills their season?
So I think the team that could come back the most from it, because it's only their first one, is Tennessee.
Agree.
I think Tennessee has not a lot, but they still have some wiggle room. You know, they have Alabama next week. You're, like I said, you're 10-2. I would be shocked if a 10-2 SEC team is not in the playoff. With Michigan and USC, you have that second loss now. That
Hmm.
second loss was to teams who are not very good. I mean, they're okay. I don't think they're, bottom feeders, but Washington and Minnesota, like, Washington went to the national title last year and wasn't even the top 25. Minnesota
Yeah.
is Minnesota,
Hmm.
and it's their second loss. Yeah, I guess if they both won out, they'd be
Yeah.
okay.
No,
But I mean,
I.
USC has Penn State still. USC has Oregon still. Michigan has Ohio State still.
Hmm.
I can't think. Michigan has Penn State still, I'm pretty sure. So I mean, 2 losses before the middle of October is not
Yeah.
great no matter who you are. So
Yeah, I agree. I think that the SEC schools that won, I totally forgot. Sorry, Aggie Nation. I think A&M and Tennessee like can use these games the best. And whether you want to say Missouri was overrated, I think Texas A&M wasn't even like a gambling underdog. Like they were a favorite.
yeah,
But I think Tennessee and A&M are the teams that can use this, or Tennessee can use this is the team that lost that can use this as the springboard. Texas A&M, I think, is the team that won can use this as the springboard. Tennessee with their loss, 0 points in the first half. I just think they fell flat. Like I trust Josh Heupel. I think Nico like that. That is the definition of just having a flat game. And credit to Arkansas, they ran the ball. They needed that one desperately. But yeah, Nico
but what
had
is
one
up
of
with
those freshman games. Yeah,
Tennessee quarterbacks on the last play of the game just running out of bounds all the freaking time?
I
They did
I
that.
don't know. And look, also this is not the list because I think it's funny. Whoever wrote the article or the tweet saying Josh Heupel needs to lose weight and not look like Coach Pillsbury Doughboy, watch it, watch it. We
It's the
watch
SEC.
it.
Like they went from the highest of highs to now you're getting called the Pillsbury Doughboy. It it changes on a whim.
No, it is funny, but Michigan, that's the team I think that I've been low on Michigan for a while. I was even low on them last year. I thought I mean, I can't talk about last year because they proved me wrong. But this year, you can't win games if you can't throw. Zooch, they had 113 passing yards.
Yeah, I mean
Th-
their
th-
offense
it-
is
it's bad.
bad,
It's
and you're
really
not
bad.
gonna.
And the scary thing about this game too was that their passing defense was like average when that's supposed to be like elite. Like, it, like the Washington Will Rogers had a great game against them. Yeah, I would say that is a great game against the Michigan defense. That's what scares you, I think, if you're a Michigan fan, was that you knew you were bad at passing. You did the things bad that you were supposed to be good at in this last game.
Right, and it's when you're looking at it, you're like, all right, we're probably. I mean, getting 30 points for them is h- like an A-plus game from that offense, getting to 30, and I don't know how much they're going to be able to do that just because they can't pass the ball. People like and can't pass the ball in terms of like at all. Like you don't.
No, they
No
they
team should be scared of them passing the ball, and their running attack isn't good enough to make it like to cancel it out. Like they're running it, they can run the ball okay,
yeah,
but that's the thing. It's
Donovan
okay.
Edwards. Donovan Edwards has been quite underwhelming this year. Um, it's I think he's a good running back, but it's like when you're the guy that slapped on the video game cover, man. I need something more out of you. Like Michigan needs more out of him. And
Yeah.
we're going to talk about him later. If Donovan Edwards was Ashton Genty, Michigan probably only one loss to Texas, probably still in the top 15. Like if they had like an Ashton Genty rushing attack, like
Oh,
it's
100%.
and that's what they had last year that they're missing right now. Uh, Missouri. We have to talk about Missouri before we move on. Man, I picked Missouri to make the playoffs, so I'm not giving up until they get 2 losses. But man, not looking good for me, man.
No, and it
Brady Cook looks terrible, dude. He
I think
25 QBR, 25 QBR.
I think out of all those SEC teams we've talked about at least a little bit so far, the Ole Miss, we haven't really talked about them, but LSU, Alabama, and Tennessee, and Missouri. Missouri's the only one who's lost so far that I'm like, okay, I seriously question if they're good enough to make the playoff. The other ones, I think at least two, maybe three of them. Who all did I? Yeah, two, maybe three of them
Hmm.
could make the playoff. Missouri, they just got pounded in. Like the other ones, I'm like, okay, like close game, couple things maybe didn't go your way, maybe didn't play your best, but a 31-point loss, and I mean, they got a
Hmm.
tough schedule too. Like that, I don't know what to say about them. Not good at quarterback. I mean, it's not like A&M was setting the world on fire offensively, and they come down and put like
Hmm.
that game was never even close. So
Yeah, it,
I guess
it, it, it
what
re-
they
it really
dropped, yeah,
wasn't.
and they dropped to
Yeah,
21st.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
it's a 15. I mean, it's a 13-point drop. That's huge in the AP poll. Michigan dropped about the same. Those are two teams that, if they're probably not ranked that high at the beginning of the year, they're probably not ranked right now. Like it's
right.
just simple as that. If they're not an SEC or Big Ten school, they're probably not ranked right now. But only time will tell. It's exciting to see all these teams. Love the upsets and love how the 12-team playoffs keeps all of these teams still engaged. Um, you know who wasn't engaged on Saturday night around midnight? And that's
Tuesday.
who's the Heisman. First of all, my spelling's not engaged, but Diego Wilde wasn't engaged because Cal blew it, man. I was in the game in Berkeley on Saturday. Watched Cal blow a 2-touchdown lead in the fourth quarter, but it was fantastic environment in Berkeley.
Also,
The
shout out
game
to
was
us for
awesome.
calling game day going to Berkeley like 4 weeks ago. We talked about it.
Yeah, no, we did call that. If someone can pull that clip, uh, editor Sean, Jamie, pull that up. But if someone can find that clip, we did call Berkeley game day, and it was incredible. The signs were awesome. I unfortunately was not there. That's when my flight was in the morning, but I did get to experience all the rest of the stuff. Was amazing. Always a good time in Berkeley watching football. But Cam Ward outside of a pick looks really good. He looks like a
Oh,
Heisman contender. That's why he was in my top three. He was in my top three. People gave me some shit not having Jalen Milroe, who's laughing now. I think Cam Ward is easily that third. But Zooch, I want to talk to you because I think it's who's the Heisman for a reason. I think this is becoming a two-man race. And I don't know if
oh
you agree with
yeah.
me.
Right now, and there's still a lot of season left, and one of the two guys in my if it was decided this week, I think it would be Ashton Genty. I
Hmm.
think he would win the Heisman. But by the time they announce the Heisman, even if I mean, he's already had a great year, but I guess if he continues on this pace, he would have a very,
If he breaks Sanders' record, I think it sucks, but that's his shot. If he can break Sanders' either touchdown or rushing record.
right. And he, like, my only fear, not my only fear, but my fear with it is you're going to have some of these guys that on bigger teams that are going to, it's going to launch them even further because if Dylan Gabriel throws for 5 touchdowns against Ohio State Saturday, then he's back in it. If or Alabama or Georgia wins out and Milroe or Carson Beck look great, they're going to be, and I just think they're going to get favoritism, fair or not, because of where they play. And I mean, if Miami keeps doing like scoring 40 points a game, then it might go
Although
to.
I think that's what helps Travis Hunter because I think, whether his team maybe they win 8 games, 9 games if he's lucky. But he does play on that big time like program with Dion and
Yeah.
the national attention and what he does is just incredible. I I want Ashton Genty to win. I think, like you said, he would win if it was voted on today. I think what helps Ashton is like this visibility of college football, the highlights becoming more readily available. Because Ashton Genty right now, his box scores are like, whoa, like shocking, right?
Right.
It's like, I mean, but like Cam Ward has great box like numbers, like all these quarterbacks. Ashton Genty so far has had the most Heisman moments. His
Oh,
runs versus Oregon, Washington State, Utah State, Georgia Southern, like that's what's helping him out, at least in the public eye. If
yeah.
the
How
if
many
if
like
the if the
50
Heisman,
yard runs does he
yeah,
have? Like 9 at this point.
yeah, it's crazy. If the Heisman was voted on in a Twitter poll, Ashton Genty would win. But
Oh, yeah.
unfortunately, it is not voted by the people. It's voted by journalists and voters who may or may not be going to bed before the West Coast games and may or may not have FS2. But but it's going to be a tight race down the stretch. Looking forward to seeing that. All right, what a great weekend. On to our on to our recurring segment. We have the list. It's where we find tweets and social media posts that aren't, let's just say, if an employer found them these people would be talking to HR. So,
Yes.
without further ado, Zooch, I think I went first last week. Who is on your list? Did you find? It was a big week for burners and tweets, so this might be a little longer segment than usual.
So first and by far number one comes from Chef Corey, and it just says, DeBoer about to be the first white man to have a burning cross in his yard in the state of Alabama.
This is like Alabama fans, man, they're nuts. That is this is the kind of stuff that it is. I am speechless. I remember Zooch, you sent me that tweet, and that was a fresh one too. That was maybe 30 minutes after the game, hour after the game. Like he didn't even let that one marinate.
No, just threw it out there. We also have Red Dirt Sport, who said Missouri's own fans are going to be leaving bad reviews on someone's insurance business at the end of this one.
That's a good one. I like that one. That's a classic.
That was a funny one. We also have oh, where did it go? Russell Shop, I'm not sure how to say it, just posted a picture of a bleeding Tennessee fan who looks like he got the crap
Was that the
beaten
guy
out of him.
that got was that the guy who got arrested
Yep.
in the Arkansas stadium? Oh, that guy was all over the burnerverse. His mugshot it was bad. That guy got
And he has the PFG Tennessee shirt on.
yep. Oh, always. I mean, it's either PFG or Peter Millar or Johnny
Yep.
O. You have to throw something on.
And I have to throw him on there because I found his Twitter and it was an immediate follow. Legend. Just Alabama halftime report, then the thumbs down emoji. The honeymoon is over. Embarrassing, disgusting, and unpaired comes to mind. I think he meant unprepared, but he put unpaired. The honeymoon is definitely over, and our defense is getting dominated, and our defensive coordinator is getting abused. We need to wake the hell up. Also, shout out to the Alabama fan who blamed the loss on having a 17-year-old receiver who has far and away been your
the
best weapon on
the
offense
best
all year.
offensive weapon, bro. Oh my goodness. Okay, so that was a lot. I also have a lot because, like I said, this was a big week. My first one comes from 1v20 or let Mac coach another year. Um, this was a UNC fan, and it said the 1v20 was referring to a drunk UNC fan who marched up the Virginia Tech student section and tried to fight 20 students. That's from at Heel Central. Great tweet, but you are now on the watch. The second one is actually a thread I have. It's from this Michigan fan account, and it says Connor Stallions says he knew of a Power 4 team that's been using Bluetooth connection in QB helmets for years. That's at JJ1 of 1. Then at official Ohio State DG says when the murderer goes on trial, if his defense is someone who beat their wife, he's already lost. Kind of stating, Connor Stallions is guilty, and now he's just kind of pointing fingers at little crimes. Then Brett Rickard at Buzz ATC says, "Weren't your coaches the one beating their wives?" Just has to stop. Referring to the Ohio State coaching staff, it just has to stop. Then my favorite one, Zooch, and I sent this to you, was from at Hail to Snurd. Fred Snurd said, "Tip the executive housekeeper $100 to let me in Pat Narduzzi's suite for 5 minutes. I left him dinner for when he arrives. She agreed not to flush the toilet, and this guy just dropped a deuce in Pat Narduzzi's private toilet."
Yep,
Please.
we're
That's the one that takes the cake for me this week. That guy has to be put in jail. At Hail to Snurd. You need to watch list.
and we aren't even in mid-October yet, so this is only this is only the beginning, and it honest to God, in what 4 weeks? Yep, 4 weeks now. 4 weeks from now, we'll have a much clearer picture of who's going to be in the playoff. However, there is a big event exactly 4 weeks from now that combined with the deep
Yes.
territory of college football will make Twitter completely unhinged.
Yes, the election cycle times college football. It's just the election cycle times the burnerverse. This is going to be an all hands on deck kind of month, and we need all of you guys too. Please, like you said, if you see something, let us know. These are some tweets that are funny. Sometimes it's just, man, these unhinged people. It's like I said, it's a game. Do not be tweeting about crosses in Kalen DeBoer's lawn. I mean, what are we doing here? What are we doing here?
I mean,
Oh,
it it just shows you, Harvey when Harvey Updike said, they're
yep,
like, "Why did you poison the trees?" And he's like, I got too much Bama in me." That was his like direct quote.
yep.
There's a lot of Harvey Updikes out there, and they aren't messing around.
They are not. They are not messing around. But let's move on to the games tomorrow because there's a lot of good ones. And before we do, just want to remind all you guys again that you can use code Z and W15 for 15% off all merch in the Settle Down store. Please do it. I got my T-shirt. Zooch got his T-shirt. Everyone at Settle Down's got a T-shirt. My dad has a T-shirt. Like I said, I used his Cal Zooch and Wild T-shirt as Cal merch for this game because I had none when I flew up. But let's move on to the Red River rivalry. This is the first game we're going to touch on in this great slate. Zooch, I want to talk to you first. What does Oklahoma have to do to win the game? Because
Uh,
they open as I think over a touchdown spread. They are underdogs by over a touchdown.
be about 20 times better on offense than they have been all year, if they want to even have a shot. No, I really, part of me thinks that it's either going to be like Texas is going to win like 41-7 or Oklahoma's going to win. You know, I still think Texas is a little bit, everyone has said, "Oh, Ole Miss is untested. Alabama, like I guess Alabama beat Georgia, but like Alabama hadn't played anyone, blah blah blah." I don't know how good Michigan is, like we talked about that a minute ago.
Yeah.
So, granted, I don't know how good Oklahoma is either, but I don't think Oklahoma's great by any stretch of the imagination. But it's a rivalry game. I mean, if Oklahoma
Anything?
can't, I think this is a little bit different one than you know. Oklahoma's used to this game. It might say it
Hmm.
might be an SEC game, but I think this is probably the game this year out of all the big ones Oklahoma has that they're the most comfortable in. So,
Yeah. No, I mean, it's neutral site. It's in a stadium that they know that they play every year. Ewers is back, or at least he's trending towards being back for Texas. So that'll be a nice, interesting storyline to see how he returns from injury. And when we brought it up a couple weeks ago, let's say Ewers starts a little slow, and maybe they're down 3 in the second quarter.
who
Like
knows?
does yeah, who knows? Does Manny get the call? But I think the only chance Oklahoma has is that if Hawkins Jr. shows up and kind of has the game of his life, kind of establishes himself as like I am the next great quarterback. Do you remember when Caleb Williams, when he was a freshman, played in that Cotton Bowl? And it's not that he even played like the best game, I would say, but it's like, man, like he showed you flashes like, wow, that's going to be a guy. Like I think that's the kind of game that Hawkins Jr. has to have at quarterback for OU because I think that offense has just been brutal. I mean, Jackson Arnold, like I said, the goatee was weighing him down. I've said it a million times before. You shave that goatee, you're probably an elite college player. But I think some people they're gonna say, "Oh man, maybe the Oklahoma defense can try to stop like this offense and the DBs and the D line." No, in my opinion, it's just gonna have to be does Hawkins Jr. have the game of his life in him this Saturday?
Yeah, and I think it's gonna have to be one of those that, like the Texas defense doesn't like completely come apart, but they allow 28 to 40-ish points, maybe. I don't think it's gonna be, oh, Oklahoma won like we saw like a few years ago, that game that was like 63 to 56 or something like
Yeah,
that. I don't think it'll be that, but I think that if Oklahoma does win, it'll kind of be like that Alabama Vanderbilt game where, I mean, it's happened. Quinn Ewers has had, and Arch Manning have had a couple bad throws
yeah,
here and there. And
little iffy games. Yeah,
Oklahoma's gotta turn those into points. Like if you get a
Mm-hmm.
turnover, go down there and score and be aggressive on those, 4th and 2s, 4th and 3s, even 4th and 1 for sure, like at or near midfield, go for it. Like you don't like this win doesn't do a ton for Texas. Like it's a big win over a rival in a game that, Oklahoma's a ranked team or whatever, but it doesn't change Texas's narrative at all. If Oklahoma wins this one, they're in the top 10. Like they're in the playoff competition or
Yeah,
conversation if they win this one. So it's a very big game for
they are.
Oklahoma. Brent
It
Venables.
is. It is, and I'm excited. It's always excited to see like the Cotton Bowl, the overage shot, the Texas State Fair there in Dallas. It's going to be great. I also I'm just fingers always crossed because it always reminds me of the Red River rivalry when the Boomer Sooner wagon tipped over. Always hoping for that every year.
It was
But
hilarious.
the biggest game, at least not traditional rivalry, is Oregon Ohio State, the biggest game in terms of ranked teams, the top 10 matchup. This is, in my opinion, the game I'm looking forward to the most. You got Oregon hosting Ohio State. I think Ohio State is the much better team. I think they have a quarterback that's serviceable, good enough. Defense is loaded, weapons all over the field. Now, I think the key to this game for Ohio State is you proved with your loaded DBs that, everyone says Dylan Gabriel can play in the NFL. Prove it. Because Dylan Gabriel has been a little iffy all year. Dylan Gabriel needs to look at this as, hey, I got to ball out against these guys because you will not see another secondary like this till probably the playoffs, Gabriel. Like
Yeah.
people, like if you want to prove that you're the guy, Heisman Trophy contender, NFL draft pick, you got to ball out against this defense.
Yeah.
That's where I think the game is. I think Gabriel's been underwhelming, and this is a chance for him to prove that he's not.
Yeah. And it's weird because it's obviously a huge game. Like you win this, whoever wins this game is going to far and away be the odds on favorite to win the Big Ten. But outside of those first couple weeks where Oregon played Idaho super close and then Boise State super close, neither one of these teams have been talked about.
I think they've been playing bad teams. That's why. I
That
mean,
yeah,
other
that
than,
is
Boise got a couple of traction just because we're in the bubble of Boise, but
right. But overall, it's not been what you're used to seeing. Like obviously, I mean Ohio State's what, number 2, or are they number 1?
mhm,
I don't. It's Texas. Yeah,
they're
Ohio
two.
State.
Yeah,
They're
Texas is
2.
number one.
So I mean, yeah, they've played Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall, Michigan State, Iowa. So this is, I mean, whew, if Ohio State loses this one, there are going to be a lot of questions surrounding Ryan Day. Fair or not, I mean, this is one of those ones that he has to go out, and it's really only been Michigan the past couple years. But I feel like you got to win this one if you're Ryan Day. I mean, Oregon, I don't think Dan Lanning's going anywhere, but if you're like Ohio State has Oregon,
Hmm.
Nebraska, and Penn State, and it's at Penn State. So, which we'll get into that conversation a little bit later with Penn State and USC
Yeah,
because that's
it's
kind of a
been.
big game too. But I, don't- I'm leaning Oregon in this one. I think that they've fixed a couple things that were kind of hurting them at the beginning of the season. They haven't looked great by any stretch of the imagination, but they're 5-0 too, and I guess we'll see. I mean, I don't know. This one's hard to pick because I just haven't seen a ton from Ohio State and Oregon. Like I said, they kind of got shit on in the first couple weeks, but we've seen other top 10 teams lose those games Oregon has won. So
Yeah, that makes a. It's definitely, it's something that I think It's another thing I want to bring up about this game is that it's in Oregon. I think that home field crowd is definitely going to play a role into seeing what Ohio State can do. I mean, when's the last time that Ohio State played in Oregon?
I don't even know if they have.
See, like that's the thing. Where it's like I don't know what Ohio State is going to be able to like how they're going to respond in Autzen. I've been to Autzen. I don't know if you've ever been to Autzen, but I've been to Autzen. You've been to Washington Husky Stadium up in Seattle. So they get loud in the Pacific Northwest. Another thing I wanted to bring up in this game is I think that I don't know if you touched on it, but the Oregon DBs are going to have the matchup of their life. Because Oregon's been playing all right. The DBs have been playing all right, but how are those DBs going to match up with probably the 5 NFL wide receivers that Ohio State has? That's what I'm looking forward most to.
Yeah, I'm excited for this game. However, I have to admit it will not be my main priority of watching on.
Oh no, because we're gonna move on to your main priority, and that is Ole Miss versus LSU. This is the game I called it Zooch the loser leaves town game because I think if you the loser of this game is gonna have a tough time squeaking into at least the SEC championship, probably a playoff as well.
Yeah, the loser of this, you have to win out, basically, unless a ton of just abnormal things happen and the Big Ten, whoever wins the Big Ten has 2 losses, whoever wins the ACC has a couple losses, whoever wins the SEC has a couple losses, whoever wins the Big 12 is going to have a couple losses, which I am praying with every fiber of my being it's not BYU who wins the Big 12. That is starting to look like a real possibility, but
Oh, 100%.
I honestly feel pretty confident that Ole Miss is going to win this game. I think that LSU, like, it's college football is so weird because a couple weeks ago, everyone was, you know, Ole Miss lost to Kentucky, right? And they're like, oh, they're overrated. Offense looks bad. Blah blah blah. And like, there's a lot of people saying that South Alabama is going to give LSU a fight, and that game ended up being like 48-10. So as long as Ole Miss doesn't have like a repeat of that Kentucky game, 1 of 10 on third down, Jackson Dart couldn't hit any open receivers on the deep ball, which he struggled a little bit with last week. And there were still a couple things like Juice Wells just got the ball knocked out of his hands at like the 4-yard line. That would have, and I can't be mad. Ole Miss won 27-3 over South Carolina, but I think LSU's defense is still a little bit questionable. And I think I think LSU will score. I think Ole Miss will score. But the most underrated part about Ole Miss so far has been their defense. Held South Carolina to 3. What was it, 20? I don't even want to look up the score because it annoys me, but they allowed 20 to Kentucky, right?
Yeah.
So their defense has been really, really good. I mean, they have the first 4 games which weren't super tough opponents, but they haven't allowed more than 20 points 6 games into the season. So like that defensive line is really good. I am a little bit concerned about Trey Harris possibly not playing because they've had
That
to
would
go
be a
to him.
big one.
They've had
And
to go to him a lot on offense.
especially
So
in a night game at LSU where it's going to be tough to, kind of call passing audibles and players getting frazzled is going to be at a very high, whether they want to or not, whether they come prepared. I know Ole Miss is, there's SEC teams are more used to playing in those big environments than if LSU gets a non-con team in there, right? But Ole Miss, I think a key to this game for them is like kind of like Oklahoma. I think Jackson Dart needs a rebound game. He needs a game that says, I am one of the best quarterbacks of the SEC. I
right.
am here. I am here to lead Ole Miss to the playoff. Like, look, I know some people are high on Garrett Nussmeier. I know fellow Tiger fan, I guess not fellow because I'm not an LSU fan, resident Tiger fan, Ryan Yeros. This is another settle down bowl this week, Zooch versus Ryan, which, we talk about the listings, people getting testy on Twitter. This is going to get testy in the group chat this Saturday. Let's just say that. I don't know what you or Ryan have cooked up for each other, but this, I don't know.
It's gonna be a fun one. It there's a couple things that are gonna happen in this game that I'm like positive. One is Brian Kelly's face will be as red as an apple at some point during the game. Because, like I said, I really do think that Ole Miss's defense is gonna like. There's still some questions at corners and stuff like that, but LSU can't run the ball like at all. They couldn't even run it against Michigan, and other teams have made that look like have been able to run against Michigan. Or
Mhm.
sorry, USC, not Michigan.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I mean, even that South Carolina game, like LSU kind of got a little bit lucky in that one. I would
Mhm.
say, like South Carolina had two defensive touchdowns called back or something like that. So, I mean, and I could be completely wrong. Maybe the environment's too much and LSU just steamrolls Ole Miss and LSU's like a playoff contender, but
Yeah.
they struggled a little bit with UCLA too. I don't know.
It's no, it's going to be interesting. I have who do you of course you think Ole Miss is going to win. I want to believe Ole Miss is going to win this game. There's a part of me though that just keeps reeling me in and say this is going to be another sneaky like 10-win LSU team. And like they're going to
I mean,
have
it
to
could
get a win
happen.
somewhere.
That is the
If I
LSU
have to choose, you know what? F it. I'll roll with Ole Miss. I got Ole Miss this game. Why not?
going Ole Miss. I think it. I don't know. I've gone back and forth a little bit. Like the stuff with the Kentucky game still scares me, but I'm also like I don't think Ole Miss is going to go 1 of 10 on third down. Like you're not going to beat a lot of teams when you're 1 of 10 on third down because that means like that was just an off game. I think LSU has had more off games. Tied with UCLA at halftime.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's
I don't know what's going to happen. But all I know is it's going to be a good game. We're just going to talk quickly, just a couple points on some other games, Zooch, if you had any. Colorado, Kansas State, that's going to be fun. It's going to be a real fun one. Because those are, I mean, if Colorado wins this, I think they're back ranked.
yeah. I mean,
I
5-1, they're definitely ranked.
Yeah, be 5-1 with a win over UCF, but I think K State's real good. I mean, Avery Johnson just has idiot moments sometimes, but other than that, I mean, it's just a classic Kansas State team. And then a homer pick, but not a homer pick. If any of you guys are wanting some late night football, just tune into CBS Sportsnet. Watch Ashton Genty run all over everyone. Because
Yeah.
they're playing Hawaii on the Big Island. Who also we could have a list for big content guy every week if we wanted to. But again, best account on Twitter. But he always talks. Do you think if Ashton Genty, if you had to guess, pulled off a big run, there will be a Big Island tweet from big content
Oh, 100%. I mean, he was tweeting about Sean Mania of the Mets today.
guy?
So he will be tweeting about Aston Genty and it'll show like with that game since that'll be kind of the, dessert for the end of the people will
Hmm.
be like kind of looking around to end their day and have
Yeah,
just watched either
definitely.
the Oregon game or the Ole Miss game.
Hmm.
One of those
No,
two
I
might.
100.
I feel like every time there's like a top 15 matchup at the same time, one of them's a blowout. So,
Yeah,
and the other
I don't
one's like
know.
really, really good. So he
We'll
will
see.
definitely be tweeting
We
about it.
we will see. We will see. All right. Well, we're gonna move on to our last segment of the day, and that is another recurring segment. We have the meme matchup of the day. I think you went first last week, Zoot, so I'm going to go first this week. This is such a good week. There wasn't a bunch of super funny matchups, but I'm going to go with the classic Zooch, Stanford versus Notre Dame, the fart sniffer bowl, as I call it. Never been two more fart sniffing fan bases. You got Notre Dame 23.5 point favorite That's insane. I mean, this is a Stanford team that just came off beating Syracuse. I don't know what they're saying, but so this is what's funny to me though, is that it's a 23.5 point favorite, but the total amount of points is 45.5. That means they're expecting to what, Stanford to put up like 2 touchdowns?
I guess, yeah, what, like 31-14, something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I always find the Stanford, Notre Dame, Navy, essentially like any of like non-state schools playing Notre Dame super funny because I just imagine it's just like a fart sniffer off between those two fan bases. But alas, that is my meme matchup of the week: Stanford, Notre Dame.
So mine, and it is a do not get on social media matchup. Whoever loses this USC Penn State game, that coach is going to get just stay off social media. That's all I'll
Let's
say.
just say, let's just say this too. If it's Lincoln Riley who loses, let's just say there will be a picture of his brisket posted. And let's just say as James Franklin loses, there may be something that's along the lines of James Franklin when he has to play a good team, and it may or may not be Keegan Michael Key
Yeah.
as the in a James Franklin outfit. So just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, I mean, no one's even talking about that matchup, and it's USC and Penn State. It's kind of hilarious. But and you just couldn't have any people that are that different. Like you have Lincoln Riley, who's like the good looking, like younger guy, like all about offense, like 4 Heisman Trophy winners have played for him. And you have James Franklin, who kind of looks like a geek. I'm pretty sure he like hates the forward pass based on watching his teams before. So I'm going
That's
USC though. I think
funny.
USC takes out Penn State,
I
and
also think USC's got it done, man. I think there's too much travel for Penn State. We didn't touch on that game. Thank you for bringing that up. We totally forgot, but yeah, those two coaches need to stay off Twitter if they lose. But man, it is such a good weekend, man. This weekend, I'm gonna be watching down in San Diego with some buddies. It's gonna be awesome. Zooch, I don't know, like, are you gonna be watching? How are you? These are the games I want to say right before we end is when you're Mountain Time or Central Time that are fun because like you can go out to the bars and like the Boise games start so late that like people will be like going out to the bars, but then like there'll be like the TV and in like Silly Birch or like a
yep.
sports bar and like people there's like going out people like having like fun going to a bar and then there's like the watching the Boise State game and it's just always the watching the football, watching crowd bars versus like the day drinking, just like having fun people interact is just amazing at bars. I love
Well,
it.
and it's one of those things, kind of like with the tournament when it's St. Patrick's Day weekend, and you get that late like 8:40 or so tip off for whoever's got like
Oh
the
yeah.
Western region, and
Yeah.
you'll go out. You've kind of been watching games all day, but you're like, oh, we're gonna go out at St. Patrick's Day, and you like there's always a point if one of those games is close that like the bar just erupts because I feel like that's every time
Oh
that like
yeah.
a 13 seed beats a 4 seed or something like
Yeah.
that. So you have people
Exactly.
who aren't even huge fans of the sport that pick that in their bracket or whatever. But it's a
Hmm.
great weekend. I mean, we they've set it up well because let me pull up the schedule real quick because our last thing to see the exact times for some of these.
Yeah, they I mean, at least for us West Coast guys, they're kind of easing our way in. All the good games are 12:30 and later, at
Yeah, I
least
mean,
Pacific Coast time.
you get I mean, I think a lot of people will be watching this South Carolina game to see South
Yeah.
Carolina, Alabama, but then 1:30, you got the Red River rivalry and USC Penn State, and that goes into I mean, Arizona Utah or Arizona BYU is not a bad matchup either.
No.
Florida Tennessee at 5, that one's not getting talked about. Then you got the
Hmm.
5:30 with Ohio State, Oregon, Ole Miss, LSU.
Hmm.
And then even 8:15 you got Kansas State, Colorado. So it's a full day of good games.
No, it's gonna be good. I'm excited. Thank you guys all for listening. We really do appreciate listening. Want to make sure you give us a like, make sure you subscribe to the channel, make sure you're following us on social media. This is why we do it. You can see not only all of our clips, but all of everyone else's clips on Settle Down. We just got Ryan Seekert from Takeover. Is it Takeover Sports? Takeover Sports is doing collabs with us now. He's got some great content. If you love BSU players, BSU specific content, please go give him a follow. But man, I'm so excited. Zooch, do you have anything else?
Nothing else. Enjoy the games. I mean, we're at the time of the year that sports are the best. You have college football going on. You got the NFL going on. Speaking of tweets that need to stop, the Robert Saleh, the things I've seen tweeted about that man and heard about that man from some Northeasterners this weekend, I will not divulge on here, but it was not nice. But no, you got NFL, you got college football. I personally think that the MLB playoffs are some of the best things to watch on TV. I get people not wanting to watch regular season baseball. I totally get that, but playoff baseball is great.
Oh, it's so much fun.
The weather's starting to get nice. Like the crowds are great at baseball playoffs. You even had the NHL start up, NBA soon. So you're creeping into that like holiday season where there's sports on every night, meaningful sports. It's not, July, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No,
just
I agree.
enjoy it because you got
It'll be over
basically
before we know it.
it's like 5 months or so, and then you're back to regular season sports and regular season college basketball.
Yeah, and just endless LeBron debates on First Take.
Yeah.
But thank you all for listening. Make sure to watch the games, and we will see you next week.